Hi, Helen. It's really nice having you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And yeah, really nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
The idea of this podcast is really to share experiences and perspectives with the industry, and you're the right person to do this. But before we begin, I just wanted to introduce you to the audience. So could you say a couple of words about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm head of RA Analytics and Systems, so responsible for data oversight within regulatory and the systems within regulatory at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company.
Perfect. And today is the perfect day to talk about KPIs and metrics. This is something you're passionate about. This is something you do day to day. And I've known that you've done some courses, you do this on a daily basis. And first question I really wanted to understand was, why is it even important to define and measure KPIs?
Yeah, so I think, as a business, there are obviously greater understanding and a desire to understand how processes work now. There are two types of KPIs, leading ones and lagging ones. So a lot of people look at lagging KPIs, so ones that look retrospectively at performance over a given time, be it the month, a quarter, to look, this is how the process has worked, or this is what's been happening. And so do a retrospective review. The leading KPIs look forward, and it's from the leading KPIs that you're actually able to make a change, to change the outcome going forward. They are harder to measure and kind of analyze what you're looking for in a leading KPI. So, for example, you could have a target of within regulatory, if you're looking to grow the business, a target of how many new submissions and registrations you're going to submit. So you could have that target and measure looking forward, and do it that way, versus, for example, looking back and just saying, well, we know we've submitted X number of new registrations. So there are two different elements to look at there, and how depending on what a company needs out of those KPIs. But ultimately, if you're looking at it from a regulatory perspective, the KPIs can give you an early indication if submissions are going to be missed, and if there are mitigating actions that need to be put in place, and just how that process is performing. If you can break the process down and find out where the pain points are in a process through the KPIs, you can look for process efficiencies and get a better understanding of a process.
This is really interesting. And I also imagine the leading KPIs can be difficult to define because you don't really know how to define them, right? Is there any way of knowing where to put that number? Is it based on the past experiences, or based on the wishes of the organization, or a mix of both?
I think it is a mix of both. It obviously has to align with organizational targets and performance and the strategy of an organization. So those KPIs should help you look forward to what are the ultimate goals of an organization or a function within an organization, to make sure you're on the right steps to get to meeting those objectives and those goals.
Right, makes a lot of sense. And now that we know why it's important, what are the actual real world benefits in having those established and measuring?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've got a bit of a background in having worked at an outsourcing company previously, and I think coming from that background, KPIs are a fundamental part, and have been for quite a while, in an outsourcing organization. Pharmaceutical company outsource, they ask for KPIs to measure how the performance of an outsourcing company, and then they can monitor performance and compliance and work from an outsourcing organization. I think as pharmaceutical industries internally to themselves change and evolve. They're becoming more data driven. Processes, we're looking at having greater scrutiny on process efficiencies and finances and that within the pharma industry itself, that actually understanding how those processes work internally is becoming more important as we look at where cost savings, efficiencies can be made internally as well as through the outsourcing component. So that focus on KPIs within a pharmaceutical industry now is becoming greater to help understand how the processes work. You can break down a large process and get an understanding of where in that process the pain points are, so that actually it could be that you've got one part of a process performing overly well and compensating for another part of the process that actually isn't efficient, but you can't see it overall. So picking why those KPIs are to help break down an understanding of a process can be really key.
It makes a lot of sense, especially because the pharmaceutical industry or life sciences are becoming increasingly complex due to regulations, due to new kinds of molecules being developed, and the amount of data that we are creating is just insane. It's huge. And I guess there's more silos and more technology being introduced. So it's really important to know where these challenges are and how we can streamline, be better, and really understand who we are as an organization. What are we doing good? What could we improve on, etc. And I can imagine there's a lot of challenges in, first of all, defining KPIs, because anything can be a KPI, but also measuring those, because there's so many things you can now measure. How do you even decide on these things? So what would you see as the main challenges? I guess something is defining the KPIs. Something would be the quality of the informational data that you have. What would you say are the top challenges when it comes to determining, measuring, and then making decisions on what you see?
Yeah, I think those absolutely are some of the main challenges, right? You've got to get the right KPIs, because as you say, there's so much data. Understanding what you want from the KPI, to work backwards to understand the KPI, is key. You can get too many KPIs and have data paralysis, that you spend all your time actually generating the data, that you don't have any time to actually action what the KPIs are showing you and drive those process benefits back. So really understanding what the KPIs are aiming for, and what data and analysis the stakeholders are looking for in the business, to make sure that you are pulling the right information and you understand the data that you're getting out is what the key message is ultimately. And yeah, the other part, I think absolutely, the KPIs are only ever going to be as good as the data quality of what is being pulled into that analysis, and helping an organization understand, the people doing the data entry in an organization understand the importance of that and the value of their data, is another part of the challenge. So particularly if you've got a decentralized model for data input, actually having the team align and understand the importance of the data model, and understand where that data is going, the visibility of it, how it's used, and the bigger picture of that data, is, I think, a fundamental way of helping overcome that challenge of people understanding the need for data. I think a lot of people, when they hear the phrase data in itself, can kind of switch off a little bit from wanting to understand data.
Right. And there's a lot of stakeholders involved, especially, I would say, global international organizations, where you have the affiliates, you have the partners who are doing part of the work, the CROs, etc. How do you even align or get everyone on the same page? Is it the likes of a little bit of change management, training, and like you mentioned, stressing the importance of having this? How do you even manage this on a global scale?
Yeah, I think it has to be down to communication and change management. post-COVID world, there is less traveling around to engage directly with individual markets, teams, etc. So it's got to be through multiple communication channels. I think there is, part of change management is not only the communication, but it's then the engagement on the back of the communication. So really looking at how different teams do engage and trying different channels to drive that engagement, and thinking about the what's in it for me to help those teams engage, and kind of breaking down any silos or fears and myths around what that data that is and how it's used.
And I think this leads nicely into the opportunities, right? So there's a lot of challenges we have, but I always like looking at things from the positive, optimistic side. And I think in this, there's a lot of positives, a lot of opportunities, both internally, but also across the whole industry. What would you see as the most important opportunities that we have, and the reason why other organizations should be looking at this more seriously as well?
So I think, like you, I always look at the positives and in a scenario and driving for that. So I think there are, a real opportunity for greater depth and knowledge of process areas for improvement. So greater process efficiencies across the business, right? You're able to use that data to focus on specific areas. Decisions can be made based on data rather than just a gut feel. So you've got something to back up any decisions and make well-informed choices. And then sharing that understanding of performance across the team. So actually, if you've got data to show, actually, look how well we're performing, then you can share it with the facts and the figures behind it to support it. And I think the other piece is really, that obviously looks internal, but if you look externally within the industry, how you can look at industry standards and benchmarking of your own organization compared to another organization, and industry standards that allow you to say, actually, are we in line with others? Are we actually leading the way here, or have we still got some work to do on our aspects of the KPIs and processes? So I think that is a real opportunity as an industry, and you work together as an industry to learn from each other across the entire industry. But I think the only bit around benchmarking in industry standards is that we need to be careful that different organizations may have slightly different endpoints or start points to their KPIs. And therefore making sure that what you're looking at within your own organization is aligned to what that industry standard, and you are comparing like for like rather than slightly different parameters on those KPIs.
I really like the idea of benchmarking because, like you said, first of all, you can compare yourself to know where you stand as an organization compared to others. But it's not just this, it's also when you see that some organizations are performing really, really well, you want to know why and what can you do as an organization to get to that level. So I see this also as a motivational or inspiring thing towards which you can strive. And then also that can start a conversation with the whole industry to say, hey, we've seen you are the top players in this part of the process. What can we do to keep up? What can we do to also be more efficient, to streamline things more, et cetera, et cetera. And also you said the importance of comparing apples to apples, of course, because we need a standard to compare against. What would be your advice to the industry? Like, what can we do to standardize some of these metrics? Like, how can we get to the point that we can actually compare apples to apples?
I think there are forums out there within the industry where I guess heads of operations and that are in discussion with each other. So, and I think as we move towards more cloud-based RIM systems as well, with that data being driven and through similar systems, and that the wealth of knowledge there is growing for us to align as an industry on on those elements of data analysis and KPIs.
Perfect. So let's hope things move forward. Let's hope that as an industry we can align, use the beauty of the cloud computing also to get this data crunched and analyzed together. With this, I would like to thank you, Helen. You've provided a lot of knowledge, a lot of interesting ideas, something that we can all think about. And I hope I talk to you soon again.
Thank you very much.